Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Franchise Show. This is the show, and I'm going to do it where we get under the hat of some of the most important topics in franchising. And it's a live show. Well, it's live if it's 5:15 in the UK on June the 3rd. And I'm joined live from, this is not a fake background. This is a real background. So I'm at a hotel and I needed to do it. And this is a real background. I'm in the King's Room. Anyway, excellent to see you here if you are here. And what do we do here on the Franchise Show? So each week we take a new topic and we take a lovely guest. And that is no exception this week. We have a fantastic guest and we have an amazing topic. So this week we are going to be talking about franchise influence in all of its guises and how influence affects our business, how we can positively influence our businesses to be more successful, how our franchisees can. And to talk about that, we have the lovely Michelle Leconte, founder of SeoSamba. It's fantastic to have you back with us. Michelle, welcome back to the Franchise Show.
Hello, Harvey. Yes, hello, everybody. That's very nice of you to have me again, after the last time.
You obviously behaved yourself because we invited you back.
Apparently. I have no recollection of it whatsoever, but I'll take your word for it.
Excellent. Well, look, thank you so much for joining us. We've got a few people here live already, but before we introduce people, perhaps you could reintroduce yourself, but also because we're going to be talking about franchise influence, let's start with the wonderful thing that you've created, and if you could explain a little bit about the Global Franchise Influencers List and how that came about, and that would be a great way to start off our conversation.
Sure, with pleasure. So I'm the CEO of SeoSamba. So SeoSamba is a marketing automation and CRM platform. So we got two different platforms. In fact, we got a cloud software that has multiple marketing tools under one roof. So that includes social marketing, email marketing, reputation management, scalable search engine optimization, call tracking, you name it, basically, right? There are lots of different tools that are integrated in there. And then we got a front-end system that we've actually open sourced. Open source is actually an interesting topic as well in relation to yielding influence. So we open source that front end. That front end is really a business solution system at this point because it integrates a content management system, just like WordPress, and open source under the same license terms, in fact, than WordPress, an e-commerce platform, a CRM, and now it even has a point of sale system. Right, that we're about to release. So that's a bit of an exclusivity that I kept for you.
Franchise show exclusive.
Exactly. The SeoSamba POS, which is very, very nice. In fact, I have it on my mobile. It's super nice. But that's basically our shtick, right? And what we do is in the industry, in the franchise industry, is that because of that hub and spoke architecture. The overall solution is actually very well suited to the franchise model. And so to give you an idea, not only from a brand marketing perspective, but we also have created editions for franchise development, for the CRM, where we help franchise brand manage the relationship with franchisees and acquire new franchisees and manage opportunities that way. As part of this process and our presence in the industry, we've done many different things from a marketing and influence standpoint, right? So we've been extremely present at the IFA for many years. We spent hundreds of thousands, right, on IFA sponsorship, and there's no secret about that. We had some pretty good fun in doing it, right? Some years we've had a sumo wrestler, like twice world champion sumo wrestler in there. Actually, the guy is you can see Yama in movies like John Wick's and different flicks, because he lives in Los Angeles. So he's a famous sumo wrestler, but very very nice. And so we had a few different themes, right, when we've done conferences, or once again in relation to actually trying to get some buzz going and maximizing the investment by maximizing the visit and building an experience, if you will, around the brand, right? But part of this, among those different initiatives in relation to the franchise market, one of the things that we've done is that we've decided about 5 years ago, I think 5 or 6 years ago, was to start building a list of who were the influencers in this space. And so, because we are looking essentially to connect with those people for our own needs, but it was actually something that you had to manually assemble, right? And so we started to look around and basically not finding the answer, as very often, we decided to actually launch an initiative and compile that list. And what we thought was useful as a predominant factor in that list would be basically the popularity of the people within the industry, right? That would be featured on that list as a good indicator of whether they can yield influence by actually getting people to vote for their candidacy, right, and support them. And so that's a major factor, ranking factor, that we use with the top global list of franchise influencers. But some of the things that we do as well is that we look at different things that goes beyond the vote, right? So there are different criteria that we look into. So I think that if you break it down really at the top, we look at the influence that that person, right, has basically on the franchise model. And so when we look at that, we look at is this person participating to shaping up really the franchise model by their positions, by the fact that they sit on committees, by the fact that they interact with legislators, people making the laws that actually inevitably are going to influence essentially the franchise model and the outcome there. So that's one of the criteria that we look at. We look at the influence as well that they yield within the industry, right? So are they actually developing interesting models within the industries, right? So if they are in a pizza business, a restaurant business, do they have a special tag on these? Are they a voice within their own industry, basically, right? So that's another criteria that we look at. We look at something that I particularly like, which is the societal impact that they might have. So it goes beyond really the franchise model. It goes beyond the industry influence. But what we are talking about now is something that actually let them convey a message, or something that might actually hopefully positively impact society as at large, right? So that's one that we particularly like. There are other. I mean, like, obviously we are looking also at the health of the brand that they lead, or they are most likely an executive in as well, and how the brand is doing. And I think that the last criteria, as I mentioned, which was the first one, has to do with the personal brand, right, and the influence that overall they yield, with the peers, but also with the public, and that's how that translates into actual vote supporting their nomination.
Yeah, I think that's fantastic, and what a great introduction to what this is. And I'm going to put a link in the comments so that people can check out the list and can check out how they get involved in this fantastic initiative. And thanks so much for that incredible introduction. Before we get into today's topic, I'd like to welcome and say hello to a few people who have joined us live already. So we have the wonderful Simon Wise. Always good to have Simon with us. Really looking forward to hearing Simon's thoughts on influence and what that means in our industry and how that influence is positively affecting our franchisees and our franchisors and our customers. We have Bob Forst. Always good to have Bob with us. He put hello all. And again, looking forward to hearing Bob's thoughts on franchise influence and how we can use influence in a positive way. Yeah, how we can use influence in a transparent way as well. And I think it's going to be really interesting to get people's feedback on that. We've got Lisa with us, Lisa Feverick. Great to have you with us, Lisa. Lisa's put, hi, everyone. Looking forward to hearing your thoughts as well on franchise influence and influence in all its guises. We have the lovely Tim Morris with us. Great to have you with us, Tim. Tim is part of course, The Bridge, who sponsor us, and it's fantastic to have you with us. He's put, afternoon, everyone. It's good to be here as always. Well, it's great to have you here. We've got Neil Newman from Gather. Great to have you with us, Neil. Looking forward to hearing your thoughts on how asking questions perhaps can influence our franchisees and influence our franchisors in a positive way. You know, how we can encourage. You know, is the word encourage and the word influence similar? He's put, hi, nice location, Harvey, you've upgraded. Well, yes, I don't own this manor house that I am staying in for a couple of nights with my wife, but they have very kindly let me use the King's Room. So yes, absolutely. I'll have to get this as a fake background, but I assure you it's 100% real. Look, we've got a couple of good questions come in from Simon. So look, let's bring these up and see what we make of them. So Simon's put here, how does being a franchise influencer contribute to franchisee success? Is the person bigger than the brand? This is really interesting because Michelle, you spoke a little bit about personal brand and how that can positively and how that can perhaps negatively affect your influence on your potential customers. So if you're a franchisor or if you work there and you're looking to try and attract some franchisees, can you do that through influence and through personal branding in your opinion and experience?
Well, I mean, most definitely, because that's what, I mean, people relate to people first and foremost, and so this, definitely the personal brand is might be like a complete business driver, for the brand ultimately. In fact, if you look at the way that, for instance, in our industry, in the software industry, lots of private equity firms are looking at opportunities for startups and emerging players, at what the top executive are doing in terms of building a community first, even building an actual business model or even revenue model, much less, because that's the hard part, right? The hard part is building a community essentially around what you are doing or attempting to do, right? And that's also valid, right? I mean, the process is also, the journey is also very interesting. In fact, it very often is a lot more interesting than the end result. So you can definitely share that, the struggle and the openness around it can be seen as as an advantage over a brand that might appear to be stalled, monolithic, or unapproachable in many ways. And I would highly recommend for any emerging brand to have this as a lever ready for them, and use that, because that's an obvious differentiator. That's something that they can do a lot better, on a one-to-one connection. I'm not saying necessarily that you have to open up an account with OnlyFans or something like that, but if you want to, you could. Why not? That would be normal, right? In that sense. So, definitely the personal brand is in my opinion, something that you can start, and even if you have as an idea, the fact that, okay, well, I'm working on something that I think might be franchisable, right, in the next couple of years. Starting to build a community now might actually be very well to your benefit, right? Because it can only accelerate essentially the development of what you are doing.
I really love what you've just said there, and look, I can speak from experience. You know my love of what you do, and I'm going to say it again, because my story with SeoSamba is important to me, and it's part of my journey. And it was where I looked originally. I came across the list. I started to connect with the people on the list. You said there about building a community. Well, that was a big part of where I started to build my community. And then you reached out. Now you support our show. It's a fantastic journey, and the destination is unknown. The journey continues.
That's right. So you better enjoy the journey, right? Because
absolutely,
you never know what the outcome is going to be. But
you've got it, and I love that. And what I also love is talking there about building a community right at the beginning. When you're thinking about franchising your business, you're thinking about perhaps your ops manuals, perhaps your franchise agreement, perhaps where you're going to find your franchisees. But actually think about your community and think about how you can build it, and how you can connect with a community. I mean, it's one thing that we do here on the Franchise Show, that engagement. The questions that are coming in are what we're talking about. And we genuinely start with nothing written down. And the conversation is the conversation our community wants to have. And that's part of building that community.
And that's exactly what happens in a brand journey, right? I mean, you have conversations, and suddenly out of the conversation that you're having, maybe with your existing franchisees, if you have some, or the community at large, that's where the best ideas are coming from. And the ideas are never, you can claim the ownership of the ideas, but the forms and everything else, especially within the AI days. I mean, it's obviously the result of many different interactions. So the more interactions you've got, the better off you are, and that's basically what I think the influence comes naturally, right? As a result of those kind of activities, and maybe a curiosity towards the others. And I think that if you start from there, you start from a good place. And maybe you don't end up building the next McDonald's, but maybe you end up having a bunch of very nice people that you would have never met before or otherwise. And if that's the end result, well, so be it. But at least you got that, and it's more than what most people can claim, right? So
I really like that. I mean, we touched on transparency and being genuine, trying to get your values as a person to come across as a culture in your business. And I really like what you said about influence comes naturally, right? I did a post recently about why I wear this hat and how this all came about. And it certainly wasn't some intentional thing at the beginning. I just wanted to add value to an industry that I had fallen in love with very quickly. It's an incredible industry, the franchise industry, how supportive it is, and how people, once they're in it, want to stay in it. It's just a really interesting industry. But I really like what you said there, is influence comes naturally. And I think that that's something people can take away from that. Just be yourself. and just try and get across in things you do who you are and what your values are. And that just naturally becomes how and what you influence, doesn't it? Love it. Love it. Let's have a little look, because we've got a few other questions coming in here, actually. Let's take a question here from, well, we've got Tom here. Let's just see what this is. I can't read it, so I have to read it live. So let's just see what it is. As a franchisor, you must ensure your influencer, your salesperson, is trusted, respect, but most of all, that they are invested in your brand. I've worked with people who have had thousands of contacts and deliver nothing. I'd rather have someone who's invested any day. Love that, Tom. And Tom, first of all, welcome to the Franchise Show. And Tom, thank you very much for this comment. I love this one. What do you make of this one, Michelle? I absolutely agree. It's not how many, it's who and what you do.
Yeah, it's. I mean, anyone in franchising, especially when it gets to the point where it's private equity backed, love scalability, right? Stories about how scalable the systems are, how scalable this is, this and that, right? But when it comes to sales, like many other activities, some of the non-scalable activities, things that you do, but you do know that you won't be able to scale that really, but it nonetheless might actually be absolutely critical at a given stage, right? So just like for the salesperson, instead of sending a mass email communication, it might be better to spend a half a day or a day researching essentially some contacts and making a connection that's going to be meaningful with somebody, because you're intimately convinced that, man, you can definitely help those people, right? That you have the tool, you have the solution for them, and I think that, and you can relate to at a level at which very few people will invest essentially the time really to actually be able to do that. And so as Tom said, right, I mean, you can have like a huge Rolodex. There's still some such a thing existing out there. But it might not be very interesting at the end of the day if you don't know how to cherry pick and understand what you're looking at and identifying where the true opportunity lies. And it's pretty much, and we were mentioning AI, it's pretty much the same thing when I see my staff, when I see people using AI, for instance, that's also something that I've noticed, is that you can get all that acceleration in terms of research, and it's a wonderful tool for that. But at the end of the day, if you don't know really what you're looking for, or if you don't have the capabilities and education to actually distinguish what's valid from invalid on the face of it, you're going to end up pretty close to where you started. And so that's really the it's really pivotal in terms of using those tools, right? It doesn't preclude essentially self-education and self-improvement at all, because it's very much something that you need to do to be able to better use those tools.
Yeah, I love that. I mean, Tom, again, thank you so much for that comment. Really important here. When you're connecting, who are you connecting with? When you're looking for franchisees, who are you looking for? And make sure that they're meaningful and that you spend time. I couldn't agree with this more. It's better to spend a half a day trying to connect and resonate with somebody who you can create a meaningful connection with, than spend a half a day connecting with 300 people that you can't have a meaningful conversation or connection with. It's a balance, but I think this is a great conversation to have about influence and how we go about that. Love that comment. Thanks so much, Tom. We've got a great comment coming up from Simon and from Ed Purnell. Let's say hello to Ed and one other person before we continue. Ed has put, looks like you're living it up today, Harvey. Yes, this is the King's Room. It's in the west wing of my house. No, I'm only joking. I'm at a hotel, so thank you. I'm going to have to come here again. It's getting a lot of compliments, the background today.
And they haven't seen the ponies and all the horses.
Oh, no, that's it. Yes, and the tapestries. Let's have a look. We've got a great comment coming up from Ed and from Simon. But let's also welcome Louis from the Netherlands. Always good to have you with us, and looking forward to hearing your thoughts on influence. Let's put up this one here from Simon. He's put, how do you use influence in a commercial way? It's a really good question. It's a really wide question. And I think my view on it is I don't think you start out wanting to do that. And I think this is what was really interesting about what you said, Michelle. And when you said influence comes naturally, it comes from perhaps putting across some genuine feelings and what you feel about different subjects, and who you are is coming across, and the commerciality of it comes from perhaps the goal that you've got. If you're trying to influence a franchisee to come to your business, that's a different thing, isn't it? What do you make of this one?
Well, so I think that on a personal brand level, yes, curiosity is really the driver, right? Curiosity in what the lives of others, right? And basically that's for me that's a starting point. When it comes to commercial side of things, you can influence in a commercial way. Most likely, it's going to be well received, where you can maximize the impact of influencing in an acceptable commercial way is going to be when the people making the search and interacting are also in that process. And so I give you an example. If you're looking for prospective franchisees, and prospective franchisees are going to be at all different levels of the funnel. At some point in the funnel, when they narrow down exactly what industry they want to be part of, they're going to be looking at 2 or 3 options, most likely, within that industry, because they've already sifted through everything, all the franchise opportunities, right? So, if your Google Ads campaigns include a keyword like franchise opportunities, forget it, right? But you get when you go down essentially to something specific, at that point when they're really serious, they've said, well, this is a lifestyle that I'm interested in, and so forth. Okay, and then they got 2-3 options, and then 2-3 options, and you might not even be part of those 2 or 3 options because you are the emerging guy, right? And there are 800-pound gorillas in the market, and you don't stand a chance really in terms of budget, marketing budget to fight those guys. But maybe one of the things that you can do is that you can try to piggyback on those established brands and then offer some comparative elements among all those different brands, and insert in there what your value proposition is going to be, right? And so if you put out that kind of content out there, then suddenly you influence in a commercial way. It's clearly commercial, right? The content is clearly commercial. You're not fooling anybody, but at the same time, that's exactly what that person is looking for, and some, since you actually expose them to your brand in the process. And I think that's and from experience, I can tell you that it's actually well received, right, from an audience standpoint, and will enable emerging brands to compete, on that level. So I think that would be my answer for the.
No, I love it. And you're absolutely right. I wrote down there curiosity, and it's a word I've often used. It's a word that is perhaps one of the core principles of what I do. Most people know I've been in franchising a relatively short amount of time, but I've been in life a little longer. But I remain curious, and I'm always going to remain curious. One thing I'm never going to be is an expert. I assure you of that, okay? Because I think if you self-proclaim yourself as an expert, you start to lose that curiosity. And curiosity is the most wonderful thing. So I love it. Let's have a look. We've got a couple more comments come in here. One from Tim coming up, one from Ed, and one from Simon. Let's have a look at one from Ed. So Ed has put, being an influencer is to affect the actions of others. For me, in franchise recruitment, it's all about affecting the prospect to take a full look at the opportunity in its full entirety so that they can make the right decision. Here's a question I'd like to ask to see if you guys align with me, though. At which stage should a franchise recruiter have the most influence? This is really interesting, actually, really interesting.
So,
yeah, what do you make of this one?
well, I think that it poses the question of the relationship between sales and marketing at this juncture, because in the 90s, okay, way back when, the role of marketing was really to get prospect into the door, but getting information was kind of challenging, right? I mean, if you didn't have the catalog of the brand, you didn't have the propaganda, blah blah blah, and so forth, very quickly you had to make contact with somebody, and that somebody will be the salesperson, right? That would then actually walk you through the process and guiding you through the entirety of the process, right? So it would be a guided process, in there. So in actuality, marketing had a small role, which was, okay, well, getting the name out there, and having enough, creating enough interest so that initial connection could be made, and then it was basically offloaded to the sales team to drive essentially the relationship all the way to the conclusion. But nowadays, the information seeker is going to tap into tons of information, and with the advent of AI, we went yet to another dimension. And so when you look at it now, the role of sales has shrunk tremendously, right? Because the role of marketing has expanded as a result. And so when there's a salesperson essentially plays an increased role or an important role into that process, that's going to be most likely at the very, very end of the process. And so the salesperson has to wear now, when you know all about this, multiple hats, including essentially working into more and more into the marketing end of things as well, right? And being able to actually nurture the relationship with the prospect, things that notoriously salespeople are bad at, which is not only dealing with a hot prospect, but actually nurturing relationship with over an extended period of time, because at some point of time, if you do that, you will build effectively a pipeline that will yield some results, right?
Absolutely. Great question, Ed. Really, really good question. Because I think like you said, Michelle, the role of the salesperson is changing, and marketing is getting a bigger part of it. And it is about nurturing a process now. It's not about selling a thing. We're talking about business opportunities. We're talking about trying to help people make the right decision here to see if they are aligned. It's a big decision for somebody, and we want people to make the right decisions. And it's a great question to pose. Whether we've got the full answer yet as to exactly, I think we're evolving as to where that influence happens, but it probably happens gradually along. And I would say that, you're right about marketing. Salespeople are blending a little bit more into marketing people. But great question. Love it. Let's have a look. I want to just bring up Constance Leyland. Great to have you here, Constance. And she's put, hello, Harvey. Well, it's always fantastic to have you with us whenever you can make it. Looking forward to hearing your thoughts on all things influence. Let's have a look here. We've got another great comment coming up from Tom, another one from Ed, but let's take one from Simon. And see what we've got here. So Simon's put, how do you leverage your influence status in franchising with the impact of AI-driven search engines? Is it time to start building your personal brand? I brought this one up. I think we've touched on this actually, about how AI is coming in, how it's having an effect, but we can also do all sorts of things to complement that. Like you said, AI is useful for research, but it doesn't necessarily do the job of the full job of influencing. I mean, let's see them create an AI of me doing this in this room, making all the mistakes I make.
Well, what's interesting with the AI aspect is that I mean, leveraging the influence that you can yield through AI is that it doesn't have to be an effort that is solely resting on the shoulders of the the marketer or the small marketing team at the corporate level, right? That is something that franchisees can participate in, right? And not only for the benefit of and they don't do it for the benefit of selling more territories, right? They do it for, you have to frame and build essentially the proposition so that it benefits them first and foremost, right? And then in that process, it's also going to benefit the brand. And so when we work with franchisees, because that's the question that comes up quite often, is how do I get my office, my store to show up in the AI summaries and those kind of things, right? And so here what we are talking about is very much about yielding influence, because the influence at the local level is something that franchisees are uniquely positioned to do. And the aggregation of those efforts is going to penetrate essentially the overall brand influence and the perception that the public is going to have from that. And so, from practical standpoint, how do you do that? Well, you can do a variety of things if you're a franchisee to actually help your location first and foremost, and that in the process it will be something that will actually help the brand. I mean, doing things at the local level means that maybe getting some new employees with an interesting background can be something that is PR worthy essentially at the local level, right? Participating in events, sponsoring some local charity, all those kind of things essentially participate to getting the brand out there, getting your name out there as a franchisee, and with the very practical benefit of objective to actually increase the sales of your unit. But in that process, you will definitely, and there are many different things. I'm just citing a couple of things in there, but you have many different angles that can be used. Whether that's citation building and all this kind of stuff, essentially that you can do to actually enhance the chances of your local office, to show up.
Absolutely. I'm going to bring up a couple of comments here actually now. We've got one from Tim and one from Tom. And they both have got a similar theme. The theme actually is trust. I'm going to bring both up. Let's read them both. Let's come up with Tom's first. He's put, a chicken cottage, we're a big believer that influence is driven by trust. Trust the person, trust the process, and trust the brand. There's something you can measure with new franchisees and conversion, also retention. I think this is a really interesting point here. I'm also going to bring up Tim's before we respond to this, because they're both about trust. Would you say that you're able to influence, you must have a combination of great relationship building to create trust and the ability to demonstrate a significant amount of knowledge around a particular subject? Let's talk about this. What role do you think trust plays in influence? How important do you think that is?
Yeah, I mean, obviously, I mean, franchisees are looking whether, and trying to find out whether the brand is well known and respected, right? And if they run into it, it's going to be one of the signals. The issue is that, and it's also an opportunity, in fact, because yes, I mean, you can buy an ad on during the Super Bowl break, right? It's a possibility. If you have the budget, you can do that. If you're short of that, some of the things that you can do are to laser target essentially the people that have actually demonstrated or shown an interest in your brand. Why would you do that? Well, because it's going to be a lot less costly than actually buying a Super Bowl ad, right? And that nowadays you got audience matching, you got different data providers that will let you essentially tap into fresh data that you can be leveraging to your advantage to do exactly that. And what is the opportunity? Well, the opportunity is that, yes, back in the 90s, again, everybody was watching that, the Super Bowl and the ads. It's still the case today, but at the same time, they're watching 3 different screens. And so you might not be able to actually get on the main screen, right, during the Super Bowl ad, but you might very well be able to get on the screen of that specific person that has been actually showing an interest in your brand. And that's the opportunity, especially for emerging brands, which is that it will give you the opportunity to build trust on the digital aspect of things, right, in terms of supporting everything else that you do, right? It's not a replacement for anything, but it's definitely an enhancer, right? It is something that if you're using a platform like Google Ads, you can show ads to those people for the next 18 months after they visit your website. Well, that's a great way of keeping the brand top of mind. And if you vary enough, essentially the content that you're going to be using in there, that's a great way for you and an inexpensive way in a greater scheme of things to keep in touch with those people and build the trust over time, because then that's really the value, the quality of that content that you're going to be publishing through this channel that's going to matter. To me, building trust has to do with what we need to get other people that were in their shoes to talk about our brand, right? So the franchisee testimonials are a great way essentially to do that, right? And you don't need to have like a 30 minutes testimonial, right? It can be 6 seconds, non-skippable point that a guy makes with your logo, and they make 1 point. And you don't bother too much the viewer, but at the same time you just ingrain them with one thought about your brand. That's it.
Yeah, I love that. I think trust is very important. But something you said here that I really like, and I write so much down during these. I get a huge amount of value. But the Super Bowl analogy that you used when you said be on the right screen, and I really like that, because that summarizes about audience targeting beautifully. Right, it's all very well being curious and building trust, being transparent, delivering the right message. But if you're not delivering that to the right screen, and it's not the right people that align with your values, then your message is wasted. I think that's such an important one to remember, to be on the right screen. Let's have a look, because we are closing up to the end of the first section of the show. We've got a couple more from Ed. And one from Bob. Let's put Bob's up and see what Bob's got to say. Bob's put, I think potential franchisees can easily read if you're excited about your own brand. Attitude is half the battle of selling new units. Why should they get excited if you're not excited as a franchisor? Absolutely, your attitude has got a huge amount to do with your influence, hasn't it?
Drink coffee, lots of it. So yeah. That's no, but obviously it's a major part of any sales event, right?
Definitely.
That's going to be a major criteria. So yes, absolutely, that has to be. You have to give that sales job to the high energy guy in the team. Right? It's better.
Definitely. Definitely. We've got about a minute left until we're going on to the last part of today. So let's bring up just a couple more comments. We will go back to these actually. Both Michelle and I can come back to the comments and we can continue this conversation. But Ed's put the lines between sales and marketing have become blurred. Absolutely, as we've said, which having worked in both, I think is a great thing, as do I. I think encouraging salespeople to get involved in marketing and that whole process is a much more enjoyable journey for all parties. Connected communication throughout. Absolutely. Get that consistent message. You know, what I love about doing this, doesn't matter who anybody is, if they watch this, I'm the same each week. Because I'm just me on this, right? And therefore a message of who I am always comes out. Right? So if you can deliver consistently the message of who you are, then it's a great thing to do. Let's have a look finally at this one before we finish up this section. Tim Morris, the ability to communicate confidently with clarity and integrity are the key elements that build trust. Knowledge demonstration is great, but I know a lot of boring people who know a lot about numbers who fail to capture my attention. You know, this is really important. You've got to work out a bit like a great teacher who works out that a child is passionate about something and they see their ears prick up and then, you know, that's what they want to talk about.
And so one of the things that we routinely recommend to the brands that we're working with on the franchise development aspect of things is really to actually help the prospective franchisees experience the brand, right? And you know, bring them in, get them to experience the brand in many, you know, in as many ways as you can, right? And that will build trust, because that means transparency, first of all, right? We're not trying to make the story you know, necessarily I mean, completely better than it needs to be. You know, every business has its challenges and up and downs, and that's understood by anyone that is worth having as a franchisee in your system, right? But you know, if you can expose them to this will help you definitely build that trust level. So if you can brainstorm on how to do this, how to bring this forward in the process as potentially an offer as well. That's something that you can bake into your sales process, right? I think that
you're right. You're absolutely right. Experiencing the brand helps build trust, and it gives people transparency because they can see what's going on. Love it. Well, look, we have come to the end of the first section of today's show. So this is the point where now this isn't my internet breaking, but this is the point because it's now technically illegal to see me without wearing a hat. So I am back, and I'm back with a new hat here. And of course, this is the part of the show that is brought to you by PJ Murphy & Sons, bespoke British hatters. So if you want a beauty like this one, then contact the lovely Paul Murphy and he'll make you one. Now, this is the part of the show that's great fun. So this is the part of the show where we're going to stop talking about franchising for a little bit, and we're going to find out what's under the hat of our lovely guest. This is also part of the show where he can get his own back on me because he can ask me a question. But let's start with Michelle. So Michelle, we like to ask just a fun little question here, something like maybe, have you got a claim to fame, or have you met somebody famous? We're talking about influence here. So maybe you've met somebody famous, or you've got an interesting hobby, anything like that. Let us know.
Have I met somebody famous? So I met Bono.
You met Bono?
Yeah.
Wow.
So
okay.
I met Bono in a pub in Nice. In fact, I was a student at the time, and in fact, I sang, believe it or not, in front of Bono and the rest of YouTube in that pub, right? So we were with friends, and actually was playing guitar, and I was a smoker at the time, like any French person,
Yeah.
Riviera, when you're 18, I turn around and tap on the shoulder of the guy and say, "You have a light," and he give me a light, and then I thank you, and then I go around, and I've got my friends looking at me, say, "You know who you got the light from?" No, and that's actually Bono. I didn't realize on the
That's
on this, and so that happened after that. They were like the open microphone where we played like a stupid song that in French.
I love it.
That sounds like the car has grown, and my daughter has grown, and all kind of stuff like that. But it was fun. It was yeah. So that's the claim to fame. Here you go.
That's fantastic. That's amazing. I love that one. I love that one. I mean, we get some amazing stories here, but to sing in front of Bono, wow. I mean,
he didn't sign me up. So I guess. I guess I didn't completely resonate. With.
It's still good though. Well, look, go on. You can ask me anything you like, any question you like. Get your own back on me. Come on, I've asked you loads. Anything.
Anything. Let's see. So Harvey, when was your last vacation? Where was it?
My last vacation, I guess it's this one.
No. Well, I mean, you can tell us about New Forest. It's a good.
Okay, let's tell you about the New Forest, because the New Forest is very special to me. So my wife and I come to the New Forest because that's where I proposed to my lovely wife. And we have it marked on a map, and every now and again we come back here to enjoy a couple of days walking and spending time in nature. So the New Forest is incredibly important to me and my wife. So that's why the New Forest. I love it. Great. Fantastic. And I love your story as well. But thank you so much. Well, we have come to the end, so we now need to just talk about what's going to be happening next week on the Franchise Show. And on the Franchise Show next week, we are going to be talking to our lovely friends at Businesses for Sale, and we are going to be talking about who buys a franchise business. It's a question that I ask often, and we get lots of different answers. So we're going to delve deep into the types of people that buy these fantastic businesses. So join us on the 10th of June, 5:15 GMT, 12:15 EST for that conversation. Look forward to joining you all then. And join me on a new show tomorrow. Franchise Talk Live. We're going to do a series of these, and I am going to be hosting this one. We are going to be talking about the power of mediation, and that is going to be a one-off tomorrow at 12 noon GMT. So please join us on that one, and let's talk it out. About mediation versus litigation. So please join me for that one-off episode. Look forward to hosting that one as well. So there you go. Until next time, I'd like to thank our wonderful audience. As ever, you are the wonderful producers and directors of these shows, and you're the ones that make this special. So a big thank you to you. And a huge thank you to Michelle. It's been fantastic talking to you. Always love talking to you. And thank you for your kind support as well.
Thank you very much, Harvey. It's always a pleasure. And thank you, everybody, for being on the show and asking all these questions. That's great. Well,
right.
Look forward to next time.
Absolutely. Definitely. Yes, you will be coming up again soon. So until next time, my friends, take very good care.